Good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, pleasure to welcome you after lunch. Hope you had a good lunch. Yes? No? No, that's a double-edged sword. No, the better the lunch, the more difficult the afternoon session is. Okay. What is the purpose of business? Now, this is a question that a lot of people have tried to answer over time. And what is the ultimate purpose of doing business? Now, at one level, we know that the purpose of doing business is to do good to society. But at the same time, ladies and gentlemen, people in this room will agree that one of the main purpose of doing business is for doing good, you need to make profit. And this session is all about how does HR technology help you to make that profit. Because if you're to do good, you need to make profit. And if you're to make profit, there are various tools that you employ, and HR technology is really one of them. And the power of technology, I think in a HR technology forum, I need not come and talk about the power of technology and how technology is changing the world. But I can't resist not talking about an event which happened 2 weeks back. And here's a gentleman who's from a German dissident, German-Polish dissident, an American citizen, speaking in front of the US Congress and making a statement saying that I'll do my best to make sure the elections in India and Brazil are not corrupted. That's the power of technology. It's influencing each one of us. And as they say, technology is no longer a platform. It's about changing behavior. It's behavior modification tools. And in that context, I have 3 very senior people with me who've experienced the power of technology, who put technology to use in their organizations. And in my own journey, I've seen organizations in 4 stages as far as leveraging technology is concerned. I call it the 4 I's stages. First is, of course, the infancy stage. Infancy stage is a stage where you do not have control over data. Data is flowing, data is unstructured. And believe you me, if you work at the SME segment, you will know that there are a hell lot of organizations in India, 90% to be odd, are in that stage. So the first I is about infancy. The second I, when we move from there, when we start using some of the tools, is really about using information. It's about access, it's about convenience, it's about cost to some extent. It's really leveraging the power of information. The third I, which I call, is when you move from information to intelligence. And that's where tools like artificial intelligence come in, analytics come in, and you actually start leveraging the power of technology to actually derive intelligence for you. You move beyond cost. And the fourth is what I call the integrated stage, which is digital ecosystem, digital platform, coexisting. And that's, according to me, it's a nirvana stage. So 4 I's: infancy, information, intelligence, and integrated. And coming to EBITA, there are 2 obvious things: are cost, productivity, efficiency. These are obvious things. So I'd like to hear from the panel the experience as far as cost and productivity is concerned, which is obvious according to me, but I want to know your experience. And beyond that, how can HR technology, in your experience, has influenced the top line? Because EBITA is about revenue also. It's not just about cost. So technology, according to me, can influence the top line and the bottom line. And I'd like to hear from you your perspective on both of them, the cost productivity aspect, which is, I think, obvious, and beyond that, the top line perspective. Please. You would like to start, Smriti? You would like to start, please.
So I think one of the points I want to make about HR technology is that is it seen as a cost or is it seen as an investment? Now, if you typically see the technology budgets are going down because technology is still considered a cost. And yet it's so ubiquitous and it's such a backbone for all organizations. But if you have a marketing budget and you want to get the rights to IPL matches, guess what? That's an investment. So firstly, the question is, what's the mindset in your organization? Is technology, specifically HR technology, is that a cost or is that an investment? So, it was very important to say that because all that we share over here, if the mindset continues to be that HR technology is a cost, then we are thinking about it very differently. And I know, my other fellow panelists have examples, so I'm just going to restrict myself to one example on top line. So firstly, in a back office organization, which I'm a part of within Cognizant, in a distributed workforce and where we use technology, HR technology is a necessity. So there is no thinking and ifs and buts. But to the question of how it contributes to the top line, let's say of a back office, if I were to give you a very specific example. So typically an associate, when they come in a 0 day and by the time they get billed, let's say on an average is about 3 months. And during those 3 months, we are training the associate on the client processes and the client, environment. Now, if me and my team have an opportunity to condense that 3 months into, let's say, 1 month, then we have actually released 2 extra months of billing time. So we've created revenue realization. Now, how do you condense 3 months into 1 month? You're using technology in training to make training as effective as it could be by using those technology tools versus using the traditional methodology. So, very specific example. And so, for example, in our business, we actually report out that number. We talk about this as, and the metric, I think all of us learned a long time back, if something you don't measure, you don't achieve. So the metric we will follow is the effectiveness of the learning and the time to productivity and the time to bill. And, clearly, that hits your top line to your question.
So, Smriti, sorry to just push you on that a bit. And, there are 2 ways it can impact the top line. One is HR technology impacting, say, X impacting Y, which is training cost or speed of training, and Y impacting Z, which is the revenue. I take that. I think it's a very good example. But do you or Adir or Prasad, can you give me examples where the technology is impacting the top line directly? Are there examples where it can impact it directly?
I think I'd like to share, first of all, a couple of things before we start into and dwell upon technology actually impacting top line. But I think one of the issues that we face with technology, I think most of the ERP solutions that are out in the market today are all at the level of systems of records. I think we will not be able to actually graduate to impacting top line till we actually try and move towards systems of engagement, the piece that some of my Reliance folks spoke about in the morning. And that's where technology starts actually impacting top lines and so on and so forth. So that's where probably we need to make a distinction between what are we using this technology for. And I think that you graduate those levels, that's where we will start actually impacting. A recent example or some of the classical things we've done so far is basically we have all assessments for frontliners basis the kind of competencies that we've narrated. And we're trying to develop the right fit for the organization. So therefore, the chances of recruiting guys who are not attuned to the culture and to the set of deliverables and the competencies that we want are not actually coming into the organization. So therefore, it is a direct impact on the top line because you are able to get a right candidate and you are able to actually then sell the right things in the marketplace. So therefore, in that sense, if you look at, if you get the right people and by usage of technology, etc., you actually have a right fit in the first go. And that's actually helped us tremendously. The other example which I wanted to actually give also is we've recently developed an application which we call internally as a one-button connect. Everything that a store manager downwards requires information on MIS of the store right up to the level of EBITDA, right up to what we are selling, right, if he has to communicate, etc., to the senior management, or leaders have to communicate with them directly. There is one tool that is given to all our frontliners, is basically what we internally call as a one-button connect. And that actually has started impacting, I would say, a lot of awareness about what we should be selling, what should we upsell, etc. So there, I think you can say that it has started kind of moving towards the system of engagement pieces which I was talking about.
So in fact, Adhir, if that can move to intelligence, that can actually have an effect on the direct effect on the top line.
Absolutely.
Because then you could relate that customer ecosystem with the employee ecosystem.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then it could be a direct impact, not through capability enhancement, but directly it can affect the
Absolutely. So I think that stage we still have to arrive at. But I think the importance is basically, if you are looking at even EBITDA margins, or typically how are we impacting it, a huge amount of training costs gets saved because no travels of training guys, no people need to come to corporate. So if you have spread across the length and breadth of the country, you can imagine when the sales force in the field gets information and product training right up into their stores, etc. There's a direct impact. Basically, it enhances their own skills. Also, the second part is also helps to cut costs on the learning side. So that's a direct impact I could suggest about what impact you could have as an organization on the EBITDA of the organization.
So Prasad, before I come to you, since he's touched upon a topic, and I know I like to debate this topic a lot, you talked about cost, okay? And typically, I think Raymond's in an organization would be an average age would be about 33, 34, 35, okay. Now, that's a generation which is not grown on technology, right? So how did you go about this? Because that would entail a lot of reskilling, restructuring, maybe downsizing, and the transition is not smooth, right? We all know a transition.
So I think we are lucky enough because right now that we have exposed this tool to the frontliners whose average age is much lower than what we're talking about. So this tool currently is exposed to the frontliners who are actually in the stores. So that average is about 25, 26. And we have not push it beyond the floor level. So I think our main aim was to actually address this particular market, because which is the consumption of our information would be, and which will actually directly hem in them in selling. Because if a season launch has to happen, they need not actually get dependent on corporate or someone coming from learning.
Conveniently digress the question.
Yeah, no. So I'm coming to that. So I'm not saying. So I'm just giving a landscape where we are currently using it. But I agree with you that could be a challenge when you go out to the manufacturing floors, etc. And I think it's a change process that one will have to use over a period of time. I don't think there is a solution that I have in mind immediately, but I agree and anticipate there will be challenges as we launch the tool across in our manufacturing units or overseas operations that we are actually going into. So that is a precise problem. We wanted to test waters with this technology with our frontliners, who are actually the most receptive bunch. And I'm happy to note, because in the first year of the launch, there is about 50% adoption, which is phenomenal in terms of an adoption rate, so to speak.
Thanks, Adhir. Prasad, what's your thought? You've worked with different organizations and on the top line.
Yeah, I think before we get into directly top line, I had some views in terms of technology. We have been interacting with more than 500 customers. Just want to ask an open question. How many of these HR professionals feel that they can impact the top line? Very good. So this is the power of technology is making. I'm sure technology is going to make a large impact on that. So to my mind, what has happened over the years, we have technology, we say we want motivated people, alignment to corporate, but a lot of our HR processes and technology, indirectly in the subconscious mind, says, I don't trust you.
Okay, interesting.
So there's a very paradigm in what we want employees to do. I say time attendance, you have to swipe, reports you have to give. So everything says, I don't trust you. And it has not been, this is my personal opinion, it is not a problem because people have accepted that as a practice.
Prasad, do you realize that you're talking in front of all HR people, most of them, 90%?
I got an exit way from here.
and you just made the statement that HR policies and processes invariably carries a distrust in the way it is designed.
I'll give you an example. Even the appraisals, as a human being, as a human being, all of us like to be praised, but we get appraised. Yeah? As if if I've got a manager, I would expect the manager to help me to ensure performance, not just end of the quarter or half year, tell me you're good, bad, ugly. So I think that is what technology is now enabling. Technology is enabling now people to connect and say, I trust you, and there's enough technology controls for the finance or the CFO saying there are enough controls to see that people, if 2% of the people flout, I got controls to check on that, but I trust you. Today, technology allows you to give proactive measures. It's like an IPL match. Just imagine somebody's going to bat on over number 19 and doesn't know what is the average run to go. Many of our employees are there, we don't know what is to be achieved. How do we achieve? Can I ask for help? So today, HR now can do, like you were saying, can know the real targets on a daily basis. And now they can be motivated, and I'm saying, like I said, salespeople don't have to come to office, claims can be settled online, learning knowledge can be given online, and now HR Tech is in a good position to say, we trust you, please align with the organizational goals, and the rewards can be even instantaneous.
Okay. Would that impact the top line directly?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think example like the examples we gave, we are talking to staffing companies, we are talking to people. You are telling people now what is asking rate, and you are giving enough chance for people to correct themselves, enough chance for people to ask support, and at the end of it, meet those goals rather than, as I said, proactively not doing it. I'll just give another example of how do you empower people. Like today, when you say I've got open appraisals. Like today, we are talking of a concept: can an employee process his own payroll? Can he process his own claims? To that extent, technology today can give rights to the people to be motivated to actually achieve the organizational targets.
Okay, I take your point, and I would like to just, before we get to the next stage, are there any questions that you want to quickly, one or two questions I can take right now to this panel before we lose the thread? Yeah, because all of them have made some provocative statements. So before I jump in and say the audience wants to know, I think if the audience wants to know, they can directly ask. Yeah, please.
Is the mic can go there?
Why don't you just tell your name and then ask the question? 1 second.
Hello everyone, I'm Arnab, I'm from Mahindra & Mahindra. So my question is to Mr. Mane. So you had just mentioned that, the technology is enabling performance. Like initially when technology wasn't there, the managers were not able to ensure performance. But now in the advent of technology, they are doing so. Could you please elaborate on that? How?
I didn't say that there was no performance earlier. It will be futile on my part for a 90-year-old organization to mention that there was no performance. I think it has enabled. And what I've told is basically sharing of the information right to the store level on targets, EBITDAs, etc., which has helped to actually help them educate and help them understand. That's and to correct that bit. So I'm not saying that erstwhile there wasn't any performance, and therefore it has enabled and enhanced the kind of delivery of people at the frontline level.
And also, I'll just like to add to that, the profile of the frontline people would have changed in your organization. There was a time when the organization would have been 1/10 of the size. It's easy for the person to come into Mumbai or wherever that center is and get trained by a workshop mode. Today, the profile is changed, the numbers are different, so they need to move into some kind of tool which can enable them. Okay. And that's where probably the technology would have helped. Am I? Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Thanks. Yeah.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Samrendra Mohanty. I have a question for you. At the starting of the discussion...
Whom?
Ma'am.
Oh, ma'am. Okay. I didn't hear that. Sorry.
At the starting of the discussion, you mentioned that you are able to reduce the training time for the employees. I would like to add something, that one of my favorite movies is The Matrix, in which you plug in something into someone's mind and instantaneously that person gets that knowledge. So fast, very easy to know, very good to know. And you also mentioned that you are using 2 matrices, effectiveness of learning and time to be productive. Could you tell me, please, how do you rate these matrices, or how accurate these matrices are? And the second part of my question is, from an individual point of view, I would like to think that it is a very, very dangerous path that you are taking. I might be wrong, but there is nothing called a chocolate or a toffee type solution for learning. You just don't go to any shop, pick up any toffee and start eating. Learning just doesn't happen just like that. If you are taking this type of approach, I'm sorry to say, but please forgive me for crossing
what's
my
the question?
limits. It's
So
not
what-
very easy. How accurate these measures are.
How accurate the measures are. Yeah.
So I think it's good to be just one lady on the panel. You don't need to remember the name, ma'am works, right? And thanks for infusing some excitement into the room. So I think it's a fair question to say that how do you know that your metrics are accurate? So I think fortunately for our industry in digital operations or back office or BPO as other people know it, the metrics are very, very quantified, unlike in some other work. And those metrics are something that we document and send back to the customer. So let me give you an example. So let's say I'm doing a claim intake. What are the number of claims in a day I do, and how accurately, and there are no errors in the claim translation that I do from a scanned copy into a particular template. So they're quantifiable metrics, so that's not difficult. So when somebody gets trained, let's say at the end of 1 month, we would compare that if that person had taken 3 months, would we get the same level of accuracy and volume from the person that we would get at the end of 1 month? And if the answer is yes, then you know that your training has been effective. And to your point that, nobody can learn, which is true. Life is really a journey, and you build a lot through reflection. But some activities don't necessarily need reflection. So if I were to ask you the question, who are you or who am I? That requires tremendous amount of reflection. The response you give at the age of 10 and what you will give at 25 and what you will give at 45 will be entirely different. But an activity where you're moving data from situation A to situation B doesn't necessarily need that kind of a build-up. So firstly, it depends on the context in which you are learning. And the example that you gave from the movie, actually I was reading up that in 2016, and this is doctors, here I'm giving you a very non-risk example. A live surgery of a patient who was undergoing cancer colon surgery was transmitted through a virtual reality headset into the experience of junior doctors. This was one way of transferring knowledge. Now, the same knowledge that somebody is going to take maybe 7 operations, I'm making it up because I'm not a doctor, versus you're immersed in that experience completely, the possibility that you're going to learn faster is there. So I think what we're not realizing is that there are inefficiencies embedded into the current system. We are not disrespecting time it takes to learning. We are challenging the inefficiency that's currently embedded. So that's the question you need to ask. Given your situation, are you disrespecting the time genuinely needed to do it versus the current model that you have, is that efficient or not?
Good. Yeah, please.
Question to Prasad, in fact. So while we're discussing on disruption in technology, in HR technology, you spoke about disruption in working of HR itself, where you told that time and attendance should not be mapped for particular employees, or employees should themselves make payroll and all. So then what do you think then the role of HR would be then?
I think you said I'm going to get beaten up now.
Yeah. You asked for it. In HR forum, you say that HR is not aligned to purpose.
And I'll tell you what, it's a golden period for the HR now. I think most of us have been complaining that HR, I don't get time to do actual HR work. I'm caught up in mundane thing. I think today we are into a stage where HR can use technology to and make HR for all managers. The way personally I feel in the next couple of years, HR will no longer be a separate dedicated department, but it will be in a trait in each manager, which these current HR managers will embed upon. And when I said don't look at time attendance and payroll, I think I'm not saying, I think we often, I got another philosophy, we often get confused between purpose and the means. Measuring attendance or monitoring attendance is not the purpose, that's the means. Getting productivity is the purpose. Ensuring performance is the purpose, not measuring performance. Paying salary on time is a purpose, payroll processing is just a means. What has happened over the period of time, all of us have got so engrossed in means, that many times, I'm not saying always, many times we lose focus of the purpose and get so enamored by technology and processes that we lose track of the purpose. So like I said, today we have got geofencing, geotagging, facial recognition. So technology will enable you that people can be in the field, like Adir was saying, you don't have to go and measure it rightly. Technology measures that. But you're telling people, you're good. It's like a customs. In customs, when you come out, there's a green channel and a red channel. The government is saying, I trust you, walk in the green channel, but if you're caught using technology, you're ripped off. So today, can HR now be almost like a parental ego and say, I trust you, but I'll put technology measures so that these safeguards are done for the corporate, but I can still ensure and motivate you by taking you on my side.
So, yeah, please.
And I think you've made some really fantastic points. And I'm just giving an example of how you can use technology which appears distrust, can build in trust into that. So our swipe systems that we talk about, right? Then again in a back office, if I'm telling my client that, oh, I'm billing you for 100 people's work into 8 hours, tomorrow the client can ask me to demonstrate evidence, saying, okay, so show me were your 100 people in office for 8 hours since you're billing me. So there is a contractual need to have that data. Now, how we've built in trust into that is, so you need to swipe, which could be distrust in a manner of speaking. But let's say one day you did not swipe, but you completed your work. You can go and add those number of hours you did without swiping, and it gets auto-approved. So nobody challenges you. So if you say, hey, by the way, on Saturday and Sunday, I put in 8 hours from home, and obviously didn't come to office, and I swiped, it sort of keeps adding on to your record. So there is an auto-approval which conveys a message of trust, but there is a need to monitor because there is a contractual need for our clients. So within that system, you can build trust itself. So I'm glad you raised it. Thank you.
So, do you have a question? Okay, please. Can I get the mic here? Yeah. We quickly want to go to the next stage, but I'll take this question, please.
Thank you. Smriti, this question is for you. You talked about HR technology. Is it a cost or an opportunity or an advantage, right? In a back office environment, I think it makes sense because it clearly shows up that it is an advantage. It is an investment. However, not necessarily back office, but how do you actually work on the mindset? Because whenever there is a budget approval or a slash, the first thing that gets hit usually is the HR budget, right? So how have you, in your experience, worked on the mindset? That will probably give us some tips to work on when we get back.
So I'll take this question, sure. Okay, and I will change it a bit. Okay, there's an author by the name of Yuval Harari. Some of you would have read his book, Homo Sapiens. And Yuval Harari actually recently spoke about a phenomena saying that human societies were organized along rivers or oceans or seas. That was a source of organizing the human civilization. But the modern civilization will be organized around data, right? If you look at communities like FB or Facebook or Amazon or whatever, it's really a community organized around data. Okay. Now, tomorrow's organizations. Today, what is an organization structure? You go to X or Y or Z or A organization. It's about marketing, sales, or it's about business unit or a matrix. But tomorrow's organization will look very different. It will be organized around data. Okay. That brings in the question of behavior modification of human beings or each one of us professionals about not thinking of like a salesperson or a marketing person or a production person, but as a person in an ecosystem which is connected to billion points. So, culture, and at a larger level, macro level, and behavior at the micro level becomes an important element of the outcome of technology. So my question is, at an individual level and at a macro level, how does HR technology affect culture and behavior? In terms of organization structure, in terms of behavior modification, something very similar to what she had, and that can actually drive cost, that can actually drive revenue in a major way that can change the organization, the ethos of the organization, the very genesis of organizations.
So just coming to your question very quickly, I think wherever anybody, not just HR, can articulately give evidence of value, you begin to change mindsets. I think as HR professionals, we've done a disservice to our own community by not being able to give the right analytics and insights, you know. And I think he put it very nicely, getting confused between the means and the purpose. So HR will say, today is the attendance, non-attendance report. So we are focusing on the mean. HR report will not say that, you know, if we were able to produce X number of widgets in month A, because of these three interventions, we are now producing X plus. So we are not talking performance, you know, we are talking mean still. So I think that is the mindset change we need to have. And maybe our conditioning, maybe years of not getting a seat on the table, we are just so happy to say, hey, we've done something that, okay, I'm not going to push the envelope. So we need a level of boldness in the younger generation of HR folks. And if you have, and again, you have the analytics, insights, and interestingly, you speak of them because, you know, I don't want to talk about the metric for reasons of confidentiality, but there was a metric we were viewing and cognizant in a certain way. And I wanted to change the view that made my business look about 0.5x better by just changing the perception on the metric. We started that journey about 5 months back. It took us 5 months of constant communication on the same message. Like if I'm talking to a senior leader, I would tell him, so what do you think this metric is? He would go back to the older one. I would say, no, remember we sent this. What do you think your elevator speech on this metric is going to be? Because that senior executive is in touch with my CEO. You know, he's sitting in the same office, so his chance of interacting. It took us like 5 to 6 months of senior leadership intervention. Forget what's happening at the junior level. So it's a slow journey, but once you're determined, it'll happen. Right?
Thanks.
So I'll give the culture question because I don't want to.
Adil, you want to take the culture question?
So basically, I just want to add to what she's saying. One is basically, if HR is going to be measuring itself only on the input metric, I think then we are not going anywhere. It has to be outcome-based and outcome metrics. That is what actually will lead you to acceptability, etc., with the business. Having said that, I think let me give us a piece about what we are doing as an organization. I think from a business standpoint, we are moving from a products company to a solutions and ultimately to an experience company. So in that journey that we are undertaking as an organization, so we'll see a lot of things which are happening in our own company, which will actually try and make, how do I actually give customers the solutions? How do I actually give experience? And I think experience is the ultimate stage, but I think we are now transitioning the product to a solutions company. So we have undertaken a lot of initiatives in terms of culture change, etc. So I think this is precisely to drive some of the things which we are trying. Because we are an integrated manufacturer of textiles as well as we have a front-end sales operation. So it is very different and diverse organizations that we have to deal with. So the new organization requires new set of culture pillars, a new set of behaviors that we need to. So we have undergoing a massive amount of what do you call the LSIP, the large-scale interactive process that we are actually undergoing to make sure that the organization of the future is ready for what we have as a vision and where we want to go as an organization. So that is something which we are clearly articulating. And actually, as we speak today, there are huge, I mean, unfortunately for us, this is not an initiative led by HR. This is an initiative led by the business. So which is a good...
I just want to stop you there. You know, this distinction should go, right? Tomorrow, it should not be an initiative by the business or HR. It should be an organization initiative.
Yeah, so it's absolutely put right on spot because we are saying it's an organization initiative. And which is actually going to help us drive what we are talking about, the change management process within once we introduce technology, etc. In fact, a couple of things which we are actually trying to do is about 3D printing on our floors. We already started printing our own accessories through 3D printers. I mean, so that's something which we have not heard of in the 90 years. So all accessories that you start finding in our Raymond stores are 3D printed today. So the people have to start embracing these changes and people have to start believing that this is change for the positive and for the good. And therefore, it's backed up by a lot of activities and actions. So I would say definitely HR tech, and coming to your question on HR technology and how does it impact culture, I think it's both ways. First of all, you create the experience for employees and actually then it sends the right messages. And you talked in the morning with the Reliance guys about the experience. We are talking about how do I enhance the experience of employees, therefore they start believing in what is being done is good for them and good for the organization. So that's what probably is the sweet spot we need to actually address as we go forward.
But Prasad, one of the part of EBITA, not directly connected with EBITA, is the risk of an organization. And, and I think the time has come that HR gets actively involved in managing risks. And one of the risks, according to me, in the technology field, they say that if data is the new oil, you've heard this? If data is the new oil, which is the richest oil field? Human beings, right? We are the richest oil fields. And HR sits on that data. So don't you think privacy will become an extremely important thing that HR needs to manage very proactively? And what do you think should be done to manage privacy?
I think, Shran, your wonderful question. I think the whole ownership of data is also changing. Today, I'll give you an example. We have got a digital locker, which we have given to all employees to have their own data. That means even after they leave the company, they don't come and ask for the Form 16 or appraisal letter, because the locker, they own it. Now, I've seen many organizations say, no, boss, don't give it because there is company data. I think it's absolutely wrong. Today, the world is saying employee, if you have the GDPR and all those things, it said that the employee owns the data. So if I'm an employee, I'm even giving my qualification certificate to you to use for a purpose and give it back to me. Data is mine. So I'm sure in a couple of years, you cannot have this data of being owned by the company. It will be owned by the employees, and HR is just a guardian. And rightly said, HR has to be very, very careful about what data they're using, whether it's appraisal data or salary data, because it belongs to the employee.
And there'll be, in 6 months' time, I think this debate will actually see much more traction about how important privacy is and how HR department is going to manage privacy, because it carries a huge reputational risks. Okay, thanks. Any more questions? We got some time left. Are there any questions? Yeah, please. Please introduce yourself and just ask the question. Yeah.
We've just talked of data security because data is held by HR in fiduciary capacity. You've talked of digital lockers, which means that repository is made available to the employee concerned. HR is the custodian, it's also available to the employee. The problem is, how do we ensure that it is secure with HR and no third party gets to breach the data? So how is that being ensured?
I think today security has become like paramount importance. I was told a lot of technology company, 30-40% of the budget on technology goes on security. So right from encryptions to PI data being encrypted. How many of you have heard about GDPR? Right? This is for the Europe, it's out of the question, but I think with the GDPR coming on May 25th, the security data, and each country is going to go after that. I think it will be, all of us will have to be paranoid about security. So like the way today you have got even salary registers or appraisal forms lying outside will be gone in the past. Which means HR people now have to be trained on managing data. And there's a huge opportunity for all of us to understand that we can't just use the data. And there are a lot of technology courses for HR people to get on information security. So it's not just hard copies, but even soft copies. Whom do you give it to? Can you share with people? Is the mail going to be encrypted? If somebody puts up a complaint, can it be shared with anyone? All is going to be very, very important. And the best part of the worst part is all real now. Next couple of months, you'll see this world changing and becoming very paranoid about data, especially after the FB, Facebook and all episodes.
Hope so. Yep. Yeah, please. Please.
Hi, I'm Sumitra Daswani from Thrive Global, which has just launched here in India. It's founded by Ariana Huffington. It's a behavioral change company focused on enhancing the individual.
Can you come to the question, madam, in the interest of time, please?
Well, this is part of the question. Okay. Through different pathways, like purpose, performance, productivity, wisdom, creativity, etc. So I'm just curious what each of you are doing within your organizations to enhance your human capital and then tracking it on an individual and aggregate level to enhance the actual person themselves, not necessarily the skills as it applies to the job function that they're in.
You will take it? Yeah. Please. Thanks.
That's
Good
such a broad question, but a great question. Thank you. So one of my favorite slides when we get into client presentations, because you do an HR slide, they want to know about, processes, how do you hire volume, how do you train, and I'm very reluctant to do that. So the first slide I actually show, in 2015, Cognizant won one of the world's most innovative companies. So, you know, what I talk about is how is innovation possible if your employees are not feeling empowered or creative enough? So innovation is not a tool. Innovation is the collective wisdom and creativity of your employees, which through a culture you have unleashed. So there is a metric, you know, it's got recognized externally. So if you have, if there is change that's rapidly happening in your organization, if the speed of adoption of change in your organization is good, you clearly have creativity unleashed. You know, so you can assess whether you are creative or not. Now, how do you unleash creativity, if that was your question? You can actually break it down to many parts. You can start with something as simple as the physical infrastructure. Now, Google offices are well known for creating those sleeping pods, private spaces, reflection spaces. I several times think of it myself, and I've discussed it with, you know, people, taking out reflection time almost as an independent creativity tool. We never think of that. We think of all sorts of tools and framework, but releasing time to do that, we never think of that because we think there's loss of productivity. So creativity from physical infrastructure spaces to technology that allows collaboration, to technology that can pull up ideas quickly, rapidly assess, you know, have an agile process to have an iterative process of whether it works or not, and then sort of spin it back, to something as simple as reward and recognition. So for example, automation in all your organizations either is already a big deal or is very quickly going to become a big deal. But automation is only possible if people closest to the process know what to do. So they know the process, but they don't have the ability to assess the opportunity. And which is why that empowerment, the physical spaces, the reward and recognition, the collaborative tools become very critical. And so I just want to give a short answer because this could just sort of go on into a very large path.
Any other questions from the audience?
Hi, my name is Raman.
Yeah.
I'm part of Deloitte. Usually, technology decisions, to my understanding, are an executive decision, right? Where the CXOs need to make that decision. A lot of us are mid-level or junior-level HR professionals.
Very good.
What is your advice on how we urge adoption of technology at a CXO
Fantastic
level?
question. Fantastic. In fact, this was something that we thought will come up. Please, Prasad, you or Adir, you want.
I think we were talking before the start of the session that a lot of the senior HR heads are already aware of how to align EBITDA margins and all. Like I said earlier, it's a fantastic opportunity for the mid-level HR people to go and understand business, how the business matrix is done, and then have a link between the purpose and the means and a linkage of technology to meet that. You should be, as mid-level managers, even if you're not asked, able to articulate that these are the 3 initiatives I want to take which will impact the top line of the company. And if you do as a group of middle-level people in your own organizations, I think over the next couple of months, you should be able to go and articulate to your head of HR or head of IT or your CEO, and I'm sure they'll hear to you because there'll be a lot of sense to it.
Yeah, I think I just mentioned that earlier as well. Metric-driven and outcome-based is what actually should drive some of the questions that you're asking me. The other thing I just want to share with these people here, I have a business head who's presenting on HR on the next cabin, on the next floor. So you can understand the kind of HR influence that is having on the HR, non-business, non-HR people. So as I speak today, there's a person who's heading up apparel and retail business who's presenting on HR technology. So I think that's the kind of influence that you need to have as an HR person across levels, then you can start see changes happening. Because if he has a buy-in, my job becomes that much more easier to sell any kind of system process. So I'm not talking about technology. He's talking about technology in the next floor.
I just want to add a real-life example to your question. A lot of you may be familiar with Chennai floods. Now, in the case of Cognizant, we have about 60,000 employees in Chennai. So there are floods, there are your employees either stuck in their homes or they're stuck in their offices, networks went down, mobile phones didn't work. We tracked every one of those 60,000 employees, and we use social media, right? And at that time, we wouldn't have thought of using that as a tool, but because we didn't have an option, and it was like, okay, we've tracked 56,000, now 4,000 left, and so on and so forth, down to the last employee. And finally, it was WhatsApp which was helping us. Now, to talk about the internal social media tools that can help you, and one of the learnings for all of us was, hey, HR teams, get your WhatsApp groups and see that everybody's number is on it. You know, get your right distribution lists, not on the email, but on your WhatsApp. So sometimes adversity gets you to think of, how you can use and leverage a certain tool without realizing it. Just wanted to add to that example.
Good. One last question, yeah. And I just want to add to that point which you said. I think over time, functions, seniority will disappear. It's about economic value added. It's about emotional quotient that you bring to the table. This is just we have structured the organization. This is an animal that we have created. The organization structure, like what we see, is an animal that we have created for the means, not for the purpose of creating value. And as the context changes, this means will change and adapt to that purpose. Please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dignitaries on the dais, off the dais. My name is Twinkle Sharma. I'm coming from an institute, that is Pune Institute of Business Management. Being a student, the moment I know that whenever I'll enter a company, the HR is the one who's going to nurture me, from providing training and development to helping me to achieving great heights.
There's a red light.
I want to know.
There's red light flashing at me, so you need to make your question fast.
Yeah. So I want to know that if you have provided the wings to a person in order to fly high, what happens when wings are cut down? After the layoff, what are the roles an HR should play? Because I saw an app outside, that Smart Raise. So they will help the people after the layoff. So I was very curious to know that after the layoff, what a HR should do and help that employee out.
Adir, you want to take it?
Can I just add one thing?
Yeah.
I think a lot of questions have been of layoffs. I think even there's a Gartner report saying even things like artificial intelligence is going to create more jobs. And the world is moving, will be less jobs, but with enough work for all of us. You may not have 9 to 5 jobs, but the work is increasing tremendously. So don't worry about layoffs and what's happening there.
Yeah, I think it's another debatable, we need to get into another debate on that. But I think quickly coming into the question, I think what technology has done is it's got a lot of risk, but the power of technology is that it can empower each one of us. Okay? There's a lot of empowerment. The lottery of what we call the womb lottery, where you are born, is no longer a deterrent or an obstacle. You are as powerful as anyone born in the world. And
Sir,
that is huge opportunity.
I totally support it because even I feel that technology is our mother and advancement is our wife.
Okay.
But how an HR can help, I was curious to know that.
We'll talk on the sidelines, otherwise she'll ask me to get out. I need to quickly summarize.
Thank you so much.
I'll just summarize. I think technology can impact the top line, bottom line. It's got huge benefits. It comes with huge challenges, risks. And I'll end the session by this quote by this author, Harari. We said, we created a Star Wars civilization with Stone Age kind of emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. The challenge each one of us have is to drive and change the institutions and help people modify behavior in line with what is required for the future. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention. I know it was a post-lunch session, but I thought we kept you awake. Thank you.